welcome back to the Bibliovert channel. My name is Jacqueline. So it's been a hot minute since we've done this, so I figured that today we could do a February and March wrap up, as well as talk about some of the books that are really high on my TBR. So I am a mood reader, and so these are not necessarily the books that I'm putting on my TBR for April, because I will probably rebel against them and then not read them in April, but they are ones that are super high on my TBR list, so I thought we could go ahead and talk about them. So I've been in a little bit of a book slump, so these are the books that I read in February and March, and let's talk about them. Okay, so the first one up, this was a reread from Blood and Ash by Jennifer L. Armentrout. So we covered this on our podcast last year, so I am doing a reread in order to prepare for the third book in the series, A Crown of Gilded Bones, that comes out this month in April, I think the 20th. And the first time that I read this book, I liked it. I liked it a whole lot. I gave it 3 stars, and there were a couple of reasons why I did that. However, this time reading it, I just absolutely loved it. Now, I know it's a super popular book. It's all over Instagram, Book Talk, all that kind of stuff right now. I think it's worth it. I really like the series. I love the characters. I love specifically the main character, Poppy, from Blood and Ash. She is so strong and compassionate. She is capable, but she cares really deeply for people. And I really love the journey that she goes on. I personally relate a lot to her with the way that she relates to other characters and the dynamic that she has in relationships. I thoroughly enjoyed this book and the series, and it's a really fun plot. So I personally recommend it. I really like it. So the next book that I read in February was The Merciful Crow by Margaret Owen, and for the most part, I enjoyed this book. I gave it 3 stars. I actually read this book for another YouTube video, so if you would like to hear a little bit more of my thoughts, you could definitely go check that out. I picked a random book off my bookshelf and read it. I think it talked a lot about some really hard conversations, and for that, I really appreciated it. However, I did have a difficult time relating to the characters and kind of connecting to them, so I don't think I'm going to continue with the next one. However, I did appreciate this book a lot. The next book that I read in February was A Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J. Maas, and this is going to be spoiler free, so don't worry if you have not read it. I will not be giving away any spoilers. I have very strong feelings about this book, and there are some things that I absolutely adored, that I think it's some of Sarah J. Maas's best writing. The relationships that are in there are just absolutely fabulous, and there are certain parts that I just absolutely latched onto, cried so hard, and enjoyed so much. There were also some things that I really did not like, and I'm not going to get into detail of those. However, if you are interested in hearing my thoughts as well as my 3 other co-hosts, we did a 3-hour episode on this book, so feel free to go check that out over on our podcast, the Bibliovertpodcast. We do a deep dive into this. So I gave this 3 stars. Again, had some mixed feelings, but I think that there were some really great parts about this book. But then there were also some things that I struggled with a little bit. So there you go. So the last book that I read for February was Lore by Alexandra Bracken, and I adore Greek and Roman mythology. However, there were a few things that kind of fell flat for me in this book. I don't love urban fantasy, so I think that's probably where a majority of my dissatisfaction with this book came from. So the best way for me to describe this book is like Greek mythology meets The Purge in modern day New York, and you have this book. I kind of wanted a little bit more from the characters and maybe even a little bit more romance. I know it's not a romance book, but just like a touch more. However, there were some really great like twists and turns that I didn't see coming in this book, and I really appreciated that. On to the books that I read in March. The first one was Queen of Shadows by Sarah J. Maas. These are the Frey Cray exclusive dust jackets. I love this book. I love this book. This is my second time rereading the Throne of Glass series. We are covering all of them over on our podcast, so feel free to go check it out, the Bibliovertpodcast. We are doing an episode per book. Except for Kingdom of Ash, we might actually make that into 2 episodes because it's massive. It's almost 1,000 pages, and we're probably going to have a lot to talk about. So, but I read this one. Honestly, I think Queen of Shadows might be one of my favorite ones in this series. I absolutely adore it. I think that this is where the characters really step into their own, where the planning gets twisty and things that you don't expect to happen. The side characters that you're introduced to are fantastic. The relationships that they have between each other, I just love it. I think the plot really, really gets interesting here. I am a plot-focused reader. I love character development, but I really need a good plot, and I think that this really delivers. The next book that I read in March was Namesake by Adrienne Young. This is the sequel to Fable, which if you enjoy stories about pirates and sea captains and living out on sea and all of the crazy things that go along with that, then this series is for you. Adrienne Young's writing is really, really beautiful. I know that writing this series is deeply personal to her and the relationships that she has, and it absolutely shows. It's beautiful writing. We did an episode of Fable over on the Bibliovertpodcast, so feel free to check that out. We talk about how we really appreciate the simplicity of Fable, and that absolutely carries over into Namesake as well. I think I was hoping for just a little bit more in the plot. However, I think it really was a beautiful conclusion to this series, and I think people who enjoyed Fable will really appreciate Namesake as well. The next one was also for the Bibliovert podcast. I read Empire of Storms by Sarah J. Maas. Talk about heartbreak. Talia, aka LB, and I were all together when we recorded this episode, and when we finished the book, we were all sitting in the room crying because it's just really heartbreaking. This ending is a gut punch. Again, it is such an amazing book in the series. Another favorite of mine for sure. You, again, have a complexity. You're introduced to even more characters. You even have a little bit of the pirates and the seafaring aspect. So if you like that, you're going to love this book. I just think you really get to see some craftiness of characters. And again, the ending is absolutely one of the most devastating endings I've read in a book. And this isn't even the end of the series. It just kind of leaves you on an end that breaks you for a while. So I love this book. It's absolutely a 5-star read for me. So the next 2 books that I read were actually on my Kindle. I read Blood and Promise and Chaos and Destiny by Miranda Lynn. So she is a new author. She released these first 2 books together and then is going to be releasing the 3rd book later on this year. There were aspects of the plot that I really, really liked, and the ending of the first book definitely kept me intrigued and made me decide to read the second one. However, I'm not quite sure I'm going to continue with the 3rd. And then I also read Kingdom of Exiles by Maxym and Martineau, which was our March Patreon book buddy read. Y'all, I'm not gonna lie, I did not have high hopes for this book. It was a TikTok made me do it book, but y'all, I really, really, really enjoyed this book. Now, I'm not sure if it was because I went in with quite low expectations. However, I was pleasantly surprised. It was really, really good. So good, I went ahead and bought the second one. I have not read it yet, but I'm excited to. So this follows a girl who has the ability to tame beasts, and she has been exiled from her community, and there are assassins who are trying to kill her, and she has to actually team up with said assassins to help them out in order to get the bounty off of her head. The best way that I can describe this book is a mixture between Pokemon and Fantastic Beasts and where to find them. And it works. It works, y'all. I know that that's an interesting combination, but it worked for me. The romance was really good. I really liked the characters. It's a dual POV. Nock, the male love interest, is plagued by a curse where if he shows any love towards anyone or reciprocates love, even in a friendship sense, he'll kill the other person. And so it's all about kind of figuring out his curse and how to get around it and everything like that. And y'all, I'm not gonna lie, I liked it. I liked it a lot. So that was a pleasant surprise for sure. Now on to some of the books that I really, really want to read. Again, this is not my April TBR. There's only one on here that I am going to be reading for sure in the month of April, but these are some books that I really, really want to get around because I've heard so many wonderful things about them. So the first one is Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert. I have seen this everywhere and I've heard people just absolutely rant and rave about this. This is about a girl named Chloe who is chronically ill, and because she is dying, she's come up with a list of 7 things that she wants to accomplish before she dies. She realizes that she needs a teacher in order to help her accomplish those 7 things, and so she enlists the help from someone named Red to help her accomplish that list. So I am super excited about this book. I think it looks so cute. I'm not usually a romance reader at all. However, with as much fantasy as I've been reading lately, and especially after we finish the Throne of Glass series, I think I'm going to need a little bit of a palate cleanser so that I don't get into a reading slump. So I'm going to give this one a shot, and I am so excited about it. Another one that I'm excited about is The Kiss of Deception by Mary E. Pearson. So I love a good arranged marriage trope, and from what I understand, this one's got one. This is about a girl named Leah who flees on her wedding day and settles into a new life when all of a sudden 2 strangers show up. And unbeknownst to her, one of them is her betrothed and the other one is an assassin sent to kill her. That is like everything I need in a good book, so I have a feeling I'm gonna love this one. It's been sitting on my shelf staring at me, so I really do want to get around to this one soon. I have been saying I'm gonna read this book for months. The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. I've actually never read anything by V.E. Schwab, and I have always wanted to, so I think that this is going to be the way that I dip my toes into the V.E. Schwab waters. I have just heard about how beautiful this book is, how beautifully written it is, that the ending is just gut-wrenching, and I just really love the premise of it. Addie is trying to flee from less than savory circumstances, so she makes a desperate bargain that ends with her being forgotten by everyone that she's ever talked to, but that she lives forever. I'm really excited about this one. I have tried to stay away from spoilers as much as I can, but this one's everywhere and I'm really excited to read it. Another one that has been on my TBR for a long time is Mirage by Somaiya Daud. This is a book about Imani who has desperately wanted to have an adventure all of her life, but when it finally comes for her, it is not quite what she expected it to be. She is kidnapped and taken to the royal palace because she looks very similar to the cruel princess who, because of her cruelty, requires a body double. This plot captivated me from the get-go, so I am really excited about reading this one soon. The last one is our April Patreon book buddy read, Awakens by Elise Kova. Y'all, I am so excited about reading this book this month. I have seen it everywhere. I have been wanting to read it. I hear that it's quite a long series, but I'm excited because the series is complete. So if I fall in love with this one, I can just sail right on through reading the rest of them. This is about Valhalla, who is a library apprentice, and she saves the life of a sorceress who is kind of the enemy. And she realizes that she has powers of her own. I'm so excited. I've read one of Elise Kova's works before and I really enjoyed it. It was a nice read, a good palate cleanser, so I'm thrilled to be reading this one this month. That is it for this video. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed it and hopefully had a few books to add to your TBR. Please feel free to leave a comment below of the books that you've read in February and March, as well as some books that are on your TBR. I love getting new recommendations, so feel free to leave that below. I hope you have a fantastic week. Happy reading, and I'll see you next time.